Hello, how's life? So we are back. So we'll be starting with the kingdom fungi. Uh, let's get going. So the kingdom fungi, it basically includes heterotrophic organisms. That is, they're dependent on others for their nutrition. Okay, they're cosmopolitan. They're found in different habitats, generally in warm and humid places. Uh, we all are actually witness to different fungal attack over a food, clothes, leather items, etc. Many people eat mushrooms. Mushrooms are also a kind of fungus. Okay, then they cause different kinds of diseases. For example, on mustard leaves, parasitic fungus can cause white spots. Okay, uh, medically they're very important. In fact, many fungi, they act as source of antibiotics. I hope you know what are antibiotics, right? Example, penicillium. Then there are some unicellular fungi. Okay, please remember, most of the fungi, they're filamentous. However, yeast, which is a fungus, happens to be unicellular in nature, and they have wide applications in making alcohol like beer. They are also used in making bread. As I already told, many fungi can cause different kinds of diseases, both in plants and animals, and they can lead to huge economic loss, particularly in the agricultural field. Example, Coccinia, it can cause rust disease in wheat. Okay, then let us look at the structure of fungi. Okay, as I already mentioned, except yeast, fungi are basically filamentous in nature. What is the difference? Yeast are unicellular. Okay. Now, if you look at the structure, you will see that fungi have some kind of long thread-like structures. Okay, slender, thin thread-like structures. These are known as hyphae. Okay, and singular is hypha, and many are called hyphae. Fine. And the network or the aggregated mass of these hyphae make up the mycelium. Okay. Now, if you look uh, inside the hyphae, you will actually see there are generally two kinds of hyphae. Okay. Number one, cynocytic hyphae. The pronunciation is cynocytic. Okay. What basically happens in cynocytic hyphae? This one, you see there is the cytoplasm and there are a lot of nuclei inside it. Okay, so it's a multinucleated cytoplasm. There is no uh, wall in between. Okay, there is a cell wall outside and there are a lot of nuclei inside. So it's a continuous tube kind of structures which are filled with multinucleated cytoplasm. On the other hand, if you see septate hyphae, what happens? They have kind of cross walls in between the nuclei. They're separated by cross walls or septae. Okay, singular wall is known as septum and many are known as septae. Okay. Now, if someone asks what is the fungal cell wall made up of, fungal cell wall is made up of chitin or chitin. People call it chitin, people call it chitin. Okay, both are acceptable. And also some kind of special polysaccharides. Okay, if you look here in this diagram, you will see there is a chitin layer. Also, there are special kind of membrane proteins. Then you have special glucans, special carbohydrates, special manoproteins. Okay, it's a hybrid kind of biomolecule made up of proteins and carbohydrates. Okay, then what is their mode of nutrition? As I said, they are heterotrophic in nature. Most of the fungi, they're basically saprophytes. Okay, saprophytes. Okay, means they will be dependent on some kind of organic matter, which can be derived from different dead substrates. Okay, some are parasitic in nature and many cause diseases. Okay, particularly those which are parasitic in nature, they can cause huge number of diseases. Some also show beneficial role as symbionts. Okay, symbiotic relationship where both the partners are deriving benefit. Example, mycorrhiza and lichens. Lichens is a mutual or symbiotic association between fungi and algae. Okay, uh, you will be learning, or rather, I guess you already know what are the individual roles played by fungi and algae in lichens. Also, mycorrhiza. Okay, in higher plants, fungi can form close association, and this is a kind of relationship where both the partners, that is the fungal partner as well as the plant, derive benefits. You will learn more about that in classes in coming days. Okay, then now it is very important. This is a bit bigger and extended things you have to know. There are many terms associated in this section, but please learn them carefully. Okay. As far as reproduction is concerned, three modes. Number one, vegetative propagation. Number two, asexual reproduction. Spores are asexual in this case. Sexual reproduction, spores are sexual. Okay. Now, sexual spores, asexual spores, we'll find out what are these. But now we have to remember a few names. Okay. Under vegetative propagation, you have fragmentation, fission, budding. How will you remember that? Many people these days use BFF, best friends forever. So budding, fission, fragmentation. You can remember that way. Best friends forever. Okay. Budding, fission, fragmentation. Asexual reproduction, that is through asexual spores. Different kinds of asexual spores are there. We have to learn that. There are basically three modes. Three kinds of asexual spores: zoospores, sporangiospores, and conidia. Okay. Then comes sexual reproduction through sexual spores. This could be basidiospores, ascospores, and oospores. You may remember it with the mnemonic BOW. Basidiospores, ascospores, oospores, BOW. Okay. I repeat, reproduction, three modes: vegetative propagation through fragmentation, fission, budding, or best friends forever. Asexual reproduction by asexual spores, which could be zoospores, sporangiospores, and conidia. Okay, CSZ. Okay. Uh, Sexual reproduction by sexual spores, oospores, ascospores, and basidiospores. Now we'll be progressing one by one. So for vegetative propagation, what happens? You have the mycelium, then this will break up into pieces, and each of the piece can grow into a new mycelium. Fine, that is fragmentation. Then we have fission as well as budding. Okay, different kinds of fungi. Particularly this is observed in East, and they're common. We have two yeast which are widely used in different industrial processes as well as in different biological studies, molecular biology studies, genetic studies, etc. This includes the fission yeast and the budding yeast. Okay. Now, in fission yeast, what happens? The mother cell will be dividing through a median fission, resulting in two daughter cells. Simple process, just a simple fission. Okay. In budding kind of vegetative propagation, what happens? There's a kind of protuberance or a bud that grows, and the bud will separate out from the mother cell. Okay. And one of the common examples they often ask in the entrance, Saccharomyces cerevisiae is an example of the fungal members that shows budding. Okay. Saccharomyces pombe exhibits fission. Okay. Beer industry, bread preparation, then in studies of different cell developmental steps, this is they have found a lot of applications. Okay, then it's clear, I believe, fragmentation, fission, budding. Then comes asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction, generally I say through asexual spores, which basically include three kinds: conidia, sporangiospores, and zoospores. Now let us check the first one, the conidia. Okay. So you have the hyphae, the mycelium, and some of the hyphae will be attached to the substrata or the layer beneath them. These are the subsurface hypha. They might penetrate inside the system also. For example, if you see some kind of a layer which has a lot of nutrients, some of the hyphae will penetrate. Okay, those are the subsurface hypha, and some of the hyphae will be in air. So these are known as aerial hypha. Okay. Often they're also called stolon, S-T-O-L-O-N. Fine. At the tip, you have something called conidiophore. Okay. Then at the distal end, you have the spores. Okay. So they are not covered by any capsule. They are lying freely. Okay. They're exposed or externally produced. So after some time, they will be released. That is, the spores are released. On germination, the mycelium will be generated again and the life cycle continues. This kind of spores are produced by different kinds of uh, fungal members, which include like aspergillus, penicillium, etc. Fine. Now we have another kind of asexual spores, which are called sporangiospores. Okay. Now you start from here. Okay. We have spores which could be plus and minus. Okay, so this plus spores and minus spores, they have to do with the genetic compatibility, and each of them will grow into their respective hyphae, the plus and minus. Then with due course of time, the sporangia appears and the sporangia will burst when maturation happens and the spores will be released. Okay, you can observe this kind of structures in different fungi like rhizobus, mucor, etc. You can often see this kind of structures under the microscope, or even with naked eyes, which seem to be colored over pieces of bread, moist bread. If you keep it for 2-3 days, you can see this kind of structures. Okay. Then you have something called zoospores. Normally, the term zoo in biology or it's associated with something that are generally motile. Okay, so generally, okay, I'm speaking, and as such, these spores are having some kind of flagella. Okay, so you can see the zoospores are having flagella. Okay. The structure here is known as conidiosporangium. The conidium is there, and upon arrival of suitable time, maturation, the germ tube may protrude out, or the conidiosporangium will be matured as zoosporangium. The zoospores will be released and they can get encysted. Okay, you see the flagella are not here upon encystation. Okay, so encysting means a kind of covering has occurred, and after some time the zoospores will germinate and the process continues. Okay, so asexual reproduction, conidia, sporangiospores, and zoospores. Okay, next we have sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction. Okay, before that I also want to ask you, if someone asks you, tell me a few differences between conidia, sporangiospores, and zoospores. Can you just give me 2-3 examples, or 2-3 points rather? So first, for example, we can see here the conidia or this kind of spores, they're not encapsulated. They are not within any special kind of structures. They are occurring freely, okay? And they're born externally or terminally. On the other hand, if you see the spores in case of sporangiospores, they are within the sporangia, and when the sporangia bursts, they are released, okay? And here you can see the zoospores are generally motile. Then you can give the examples of different fungi which exhibits this kind of asexual reproduction. But at the same time, I also want to mention here that a particular species of fungus can exhibit both type of reproduction also. For example, Phytophthora infestans, which actually causes a disease in potato, a blight disease in potato, which leads to loss of economic, huge economic loss in agricultural field. It can actually exhibit both asexual and sexual mode of reproduction. Okay. Now, coming to sexual reproduction, we have three kinds of spores: oospores, ascospores, basidiospores. So to remember, bow, basidio, asco, oo. Fine. We'll learn a little bit more about the basidiospores. Just note about ascospores, a special structure called ascocarp. Then you have the dikaryotic hyphae. We'll come across that also. And you have the ascospores. And also you have this special structures called a fruiting body, which are releasing the spores. Then germinants are there. They will form the mycelia. The primordia is formed. The fruiting body, the whole cycle continues. Okay. Now let us slightly go into details. Okay. If you actually go and study the sexual reproduction fungi, the whole sexual cycle can be classified into three steps. Number one, plasmogamy. Number two, karyogamy. Number three, meiosis. So what happens in plasmogamy? Let us start from here. Okay. So you have two motile or non-motile gametes. Okay. And in plasmogamy, the protoplasm of the two motile or non-motile gametes which are compatible for sexual reproduction. That's why shown as plus and minus. Compatible. Okay, remember the word compatible. Okay. So they will undergo fusion. Which aspect of fusion? The fusion of protoplasm. Now many people often confuse they get confused with the word protoplasm and cytoplasm. Okay, the word protoplasm actually deals with the entire living component of the cell with the cell membrane and the nucleus. Okay, the cytoplasm basically includes the liquid component and the plasma membrane without the nucleus. Okay, so protoplasm is equal to cytoplasm plus the nucleus and its component. Okay, so when two hyphae come together, the entire contents they get fused. Okay, but the individual nucleus, they are maintaining their identity. So that's why they are shown as N and N. Okay. Then when karyogamy happens, the two nuclei from this gametes, they will fuse. Then you have the zygote. Okay. The zygote is a diploid structure which is 2n. Now you can use 2n. Here you don't use 2n because the individual identity of n and n is maintained. But when the fusion of the nuclei occurred, then only you have 2n. Then you have the meiosis. I hope you know what is meiosis. It results in haploid structures. The chromosome number is reduced to half. So again, you have the spores. The hyphae are produced and the process continues. So to just give you an example, in your NCERT textbook, they say two haploid hyphae, okay, come together and fuse. Okay, so two haploid hyphae, the plus and minus mating type. You see here this and this. Okay, so let us start from this. Okay, this is the plus mating type, this is the minus mating type. From there you have the mycelial hyphae. They will come together and the fusion will take place, which is known as plasmogamy, the fusion of the protoplasm of these two hyphae. Then you have something called dikaryotic mycelium, means the mycelium will have two types of nuclei, N and N. Okay, this dikaryotic is represented as N plus N, the dikaryotic stage. Okay, then the fusion of the two haploid cells immediately results in diploid cells after this dikaryotic stage. We'll see to that. See, here a sentence is written in ascomycetes and basidiomycetes. Okay, you have to study a little bit about these also in the next presentation. What happens a dikaryotic stage or dikaryophase? Now, why it is called dikaryote? Karyon, I told it refers to nucleus. So two types of nuclei are there. So a dikaryotic stage or dikaryophase N plus N, that is two nuclei per cell occurs. Such a condition is known as dikaryon. Okay, so this stage. Fine. Then the parental nuclei fuse and the cells become diploid. So two N structures are generated. Okay, the fusion of the nuclei. Fine. Also, there are special fruiting bodies. You might have seen mushrooms, right? So these fruiting bodies are the structures where reduction, division, or meiosis take place. Okay, and this leads to the formation of haploid spores. So once the diploid structures are formed, and it is followed by meiosis. This will lead to the production of haploid spores, and again the mycelial hyphae will be generated. The cycle will continue. This is sexual reproduction in fungi. With this, I come to an end. So let's say a bye for a few minutes.